some, he's been called controversial.
Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show?
My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something.
We both took the same oath, to defend the Constitution against all English foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that.
So well, it doesn't show. How can I contain this anguish and this pain? Knowing that you're right, blinded by the lies.
He is the free American, Clay Douglas.
I have no right, blinded by the lies. It's your eyes, blinded by the lies.
Catch the free American weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
Every time I think about the damage that's been done, the anger wells inside me till I'm almost overcome. I want to tear the moon out of the sky and drop the sun. Why do I feel so always like I'm the only one?
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
You're so making the darkness will be why eternity. Like babies under in the shadows of the night. They break inside and enter through the windows of your mind. How can I?
Alright, one more here. And we'll be up and recording here after the intro on this. Alright, tell me, if we're on the, okay, no audio here. Alright, let's try it again. Alright, are we, alright, looks like we got Revolution Radio up now. And if you can hear me on the chat room, let me know. Got a little problems here. But you can hear me alright, huh, Keith?
I surely can.
Alright, we'll try this one more time. Alright, hopefully I'm, okay, great, we're live now. My guest today is Keith Broaders. Keith has started the Constitution Club. Hello, Keith. How are you?
Very fine. Thank you very much, Clay.
Well, I think you're having success because one of the people that I met during the Charles Collins campaign, he was working with Governor Edwin Meacham. His name's Walt Mars, and we were kind of at odds because he was promoting Meacham for president in '96, and I was promoting Charles Collins, who wanted to shut down the Fed and reissue constitutional money if he got to be president. And he mentioned you. He mentioned the Constitution Club. Now, what I've been telling people, I'm working on a project called Liberty Villages, which basically is pretty simple. I think Liberty Villages has already been done. It's already been done. 200 years ago, we started going across the country, and we started all these little towns surrounded by farms, and that was a Liberty Village. Every town was a Liberty Village. Every town was supporting the farmers. The farmers got to go into town and buy from the merchants. It worked. It worked. And today, we're in the era of big business. I used to go with my grandmother. I remember going over to Weatherford Farmers Market every Sunday with my grandmother. Well, one couple of Sundays, you know. And we had watermelons, all the fresh fruit out there. It was just a really relaxing, and Grandma had the best food in the world. To me, that's Liberty Villages. To me, we already done this. To me, the Constitution, with the Bill of Rights attachment, that's our guideline. I mean, I've had people in Truth Seekers meetings sit down with me and say, well, we need to decide what we want to do. What kind of structure we want to have? Do we want to be a 501c3? Well, you don't need to be a 501c3 unless you're making money. If you ain't making money, you ain't doing something right. And what structure do you need beyond the Bill of Rights? I mean, this the Bill of Rights is God's rights to us, not unalienable by governments.
You know, Clay, let me just interject something here.
Okay.
You know, back when I was a kid, back in the 1950s and early 60s, growing up, I lived up in Northern California in a county. It was called Napa County. I lived in a little town called St. Helena. We had a whole different arrangement then, a whole different paradigm. You know, we had a fire at our house one time. It wasn't a major fire, but the word got out. And all of a sudden, the community rallied behind, and there were meals that were being prepared and delivered, and there were people that were offering to watch the children, and there was just an outpouring of love within the community. And frankly, if you go back to the early days of our country, when someone fell on hard times, it wasn't the government that rushed in, it was your neighbor that rushed in. If a person's barn burned down, the entire community would get together, and they would bring their wood, and they would bring their hammers and their tools, and they would reconstruct this guy's barn in a matter of days. And the community rallied behind one another. There was a real sense of community. There was a real sense of brotherhood. Everybody knew their neighbor, and they knew their children, and they knew their names. Unfortunately, we created a situation today where there's an awful lot of people living, particularly in the cities, who couldn't even tell you who lived right next door to them, let alone they didn't know them, and they frankly didn't even care about them. In order to really develop the proper attitude, you know, you can't love someone if you don't know the person, and so it's really important for people to develop a sense of community, and that's why I think your concept of this idea of a Liberty Village is it's not anything new. It's the way this country was built from the very beginning, from the bottom to the top.
The Richard Kelly Hoskins, another one of these authors that I've had on my show many times. I've sold his books. He and one statement he made really stood out in my mind and backed my concept for Liberty Villages, and that was every country, every nation, every civilization has been built on the idea of the self-sufficient family farm. And
well, that was exactly what Thomas Jefferson had suggested from the very beginning. He was in favor of America being an agrarian society or economy. You know, today we have a situation where kids go to college so that they can learn how to be dependent on somebody else. I mean, we should be teaching our young people how to become entrepreneurs, how to take care of yourself so that you can be independent and free. But that's not what's happening. It seems like the people that are in the inner circle, in the inner financial circle, they want to lock everyone else out, and they don't want us to be entrepreneurs. They don't want us to think for ourselves and to be independent. They want us to be dependent on them and the government.
I've told people I've been legislated out of more businesses than most people ever been in. And you know, Ayn Rand had it right. She said anytime the government has no control over honest citizens, so they have to make us into criminals. They made our farmers into criminals for growing corn, for growing hemp. Hey, hemp was our #1 cash crop. And somehow it's been programmed into the American people. That's a bad thing. You need to go to jail if you got any hemp growing. Now, my concept...
Well, I guess George Washington would...
Yes, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, World War II, the farmers were required to grow hemp. Today, there's one state in the country where you can grow hemp, where you can smoke a joint and not go to worry about going to prison or losing your car or losing your home or getting shot in a drug raid.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I think we've lost our connection here.
Okay, let me see here. Hold on. I've got you. I can hear you, Keith.
I'm not able to hear what you're saying at all.
All right, hold on a minute. Let me try to switch microphones here to see if I can get something that works. All right, can you hear me on this one? Can you hear me on this one, Keith? I've lost that one. I've lost this one. Let me see if I can get Keith back on this other machine here. Hang on. All right. We've tried to hook back up. We lost the whole Skype. We've lost the whole Skype, and Keith, are you back at it? Okay, let me see. Let me try to get you in. Well, that was interesting, guys. The old computer went down or something. Okay, I think I've got you now, Keith. Yes, sir. Can you hear me, Keith? Can you hear me now? Keith? I can't hear you. How can you hear me? I've just changed microphones, Keith.
We have a terrible connection.
Let me try calling you right back. Okay. I'll call you right back. All right. I don't know what's going on here.
Welcome to Blog Talk Radio. Please enter your host PIN when finished. Press the... Our menu has recently changed. Please listen carefully to the new prompts before making your selection. To start your show now, press 1. To hear important instructions, turn to the page you're calling back into a live show. We are reconnecting you now.
we're back trying to get everything back up here. Everything crashed. Tried it on 2 different computers, and again, my apologies here. I don't know what's going on. Incredible here. Nothing's working. Nothing is working. Nothing on either computer. Alright, I think I'm back on Revolution now. I think I'm back. I haven't been able to get my guest back up. He couldn't hear me. Can you hear me in the chat room? I have a connection. Okay, thank you, Olive. I appreciate that. Now let me see. I have gone through...
Welcome to Blog Talk Radio. Please enter your host pin. When finished, press the pound key.
The PIN you entered does not match the PIN you have on file for your account. Please re-enter your PIN.
Welcome to Blog Talk Radio. Please enter your host pin when finished.
Radio, Freedom Slips.
Welcome to Blog Talk Radio. Please enter your host pin. When finished, press the pound key.
Hello? Oh, Keith, hold on. Hopefully you can hear me now. Hopefully you can hear me now.
It appears you're calling back into our show. We are reconnecting you now.
Alright, can you hear me now, Keith?
I can, but well, so far this has just been a real challenge.
Hey, it's been a real challenge. Everybody in the chat room's upset. Everybody on Revolution set up.
Listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
All right. Now, just for you folks in the chat room to understand, here, I have got 2 computers here on 2 totally separate incoming lines, and I only had one going, and it kept dropping. Suddenly my guest couldn't hear me. Suddenly I couldn't. It took me 3 times to get onto there's only one Skype open right now, Nighthawk. Only one Skype open. The other computer I shut down and tried to do that. I've tried to do this. I'm doing the best that I can. Now, Keith, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but before we got interrupted here, we were talking about the Liberty Village concept. Now, I started out to do the Liberty Village out in 30 miles away from the nearest town. And I thought this would be a good use of rural farms and ranches, helping restore the family farm. As I moved into a city, I actually see the blocks. If people work together in their county, own their block, to try to grow food, to try to generate electricity from the roofs. You got a lot of area up there. Why not put solar panels up there? Add a solar panel every week when you so you can make your home. You can make your home into income generator. Not to mention being able to be comfortable. And if you put your if you start growing food instead of grass in the backyard, there's one couple in Pasadena, California. They're producing 6,000 pounds of food from their backyard. Now, I'm sure not everybody can do that. I'm sure that, and you know, there's people that don't like to garden, but I bet your neighbor does. I don't work on Harleys, but my neighbor does. Sure like to ride them though. And it's like the only thing we need is the cooperation and some kind of central focus. And we could restore the family farm. We could restore the self-sufficient family farm right back in the backyards of the houses we built on that family farm years ago, 50 years ago.
Clay, if you really stop and take a look at the whole purpose of why towns and cities were established in the first place, it was for the mutual benefit of people as a whole. It was an idea essentially where the people essentially would unite together to protect themselves and to better sustain their lives and their liberty and their property. We're getting an echo again.
Okay, well, I just had to plug something back in here. So, that should be all right. How about that?
Okay, well, one of the things that I think is important is obviously there used to be something called the volunteer fire department.
Yes.
And if there was a fire, the people would jump on the truck and they would pitch in and they would solve the problems. But you see, in the middle of the 19th century, all of a sudden the counties and the cities and the states began to become incorporated. And what they did essentially is they robbed from the people their God-given responsibility to take care of one another. And now all of a sudden people said, well, you know, I don't have to take care of my children because it's the duty and it's the responsibility of the state to provide daycare and to provide breakfast for the students. And I mean, all of a sudden, individual responsibility went away. And frankly, there is a problem in that people generally want to take the course of least resistance. People want the government to do things for them so that they don't have to take responsibility. Everybody wants to be free, but nobody wants to be responsible. And I think that's the problem. If you are going to be responsible, you have to be willing to assume the possibilities that you may succeed and you may fail. But if the responsibility is on your shoulders. But because people don't want to fail, they don't want to risk. And if there is no risk, there is no reward. After all, the fruit on the tree does not grow on the trunk, it grows out on the limb.
Right. Well, it is a responsibility, but Ben, they have really installed a system of programming, and it's called television. It controls what you think, what you aspire to be. You know, the song keeps popping up in my mind, Keith. How are you going to get them back on the farm after they've seen L.A. or after they've seen Gay Perry, I think it was in World War II, after World War I? I used to tell people when we started the militias, which, by the way, folks, is still a good idea. Matter of fact, one of my regular guests on here that started well-regulated American militias has now become a commander in the Texas state militia, and the Texas, they are meeting next week with the governor, and they're meeting with their sheriff, and basically the militia, you know, I was responsible for starting the militia in New Mexico, and I did it in my governor's office, Governor Gary Johnson, who should have been president. So the whole idea of the Second Amendment, if you support the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, then you need a well-regulated militia. And that's every able-bodied man between the ages of 18 and 45, folks. You don't just, you know, I went to a college in Charles Collins, and people were nervous because they heard I was the militia. And I asked the boy who's standing there, I said, you're worried about the militia? How old are you, son? 21? 22? 24? Guess what? You're part of the militia. Governor can call you up any time. You're part of the militia. Every able-bodied male by U.S. law. Am I accurate on that?
You bet.
So we're the people, you know, and the people out there that are they're calling us names. They're calling veterans names. Well, veterans might be terrorists. The whole fusion centers came about because the government was worried about homegrown terrorists. And I've referred to the whole war on terrorism war as anyone that didn't want to go along with one world banking, one world oil company, one world money.
You know, Clay, one of the things I wanted to mention here, you mentioned this idea of the one world money. I find that it's very interesting. If you go back in the recent past, and if you take a look at the countries today that are basically the ones that have been attacked by our media, Libya, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Syria, North Korea, you know what all those countries have in common? They all have in common, or they had in common, an independent monetary system that was not interlinked with the Rothschilds and the international banking cartels. It seems like the enemies that we are taught, the people that we're taught to hate, are those countries who have independent money.
Yes, and of course we had independent money 100 years ago. Andrew Jackson helped us. Lincoln was killed because he issued greenbacks. Kennedy was killed because he issued U.S. notes. And you know, so the real enemy out here is the bankers. Now, I want to discuss, this is one of the things I want to talk with you, and because we can talk about this reasonably. We are both concerned about this country, about the safety of our country. I'm concerned for my grandchildren. Now, I didn't start the Free American Magazine and this radio show, Keith, to take over the world. I didn't take it I didn't do it to get rich. You know, I was just outraged by Waco. I saw the militia as a way to fix that. And I immediately got demonized by Jewish publications, the ADL on Southern Poverty Law, and AIPAC. People, all things and people that have been linked into terrorism, into espionage, and yet, if I mention the word Jew, and it just happened on the chat room. Somebody made a comment, Free American, it's television. I call it Talmud vision. Because they brag in Hollywood about Jews owning television. Now, why would I be anti-Semitic for stating a fact that the Jews state we control Hollywood, we control the media, we own ABC, we own NBC. How, if our media is the problem and bankers are the problem and a majority of people are Jewish in that field. This is a type of mind control that's going on to try to demonize the militias by painting us out as racist. They're demonizing Tea Party, pointing them out as racist. They've tried to do this. They're using this race thing, and you know, I don't care what color Obama is. He's a communist. He's a communist, and what he's doing here is setting up the same thing they tried to set up in the Soviet Union, and the bankers arm both sides. So it don't matter, and I've told people to look, the Constitution takes care of you, whether you're, if you want to hug a tree or beat your head against that wailing wall or get on your knees and pray for a Cadillac, you can do that. I don't care how you want to work. If you want to hug trees, go ahead. I got a pair of tweezers here. But I've gone from owning 2 magazines and doing this radio show across the worldwide shortwave with a lot of advertisers. And frankly, just for your information, I am restoring and restarting the Free American magazine as it should be, as an online magazine. Because that way we can add the videos and a lot of other things to every issue. And I'm going to probably bring it out 2 times a week. And at the same time, I'm going to be pushing in the centerfold the idea that you can start a Liberty Village in your neighborhood. And if we can do the co-op so you can buy together and get better prices on everything, then it's a way to help. And Oklahoma is doing that. It's called a food co-op, and I highly recommend you check out Oklahoma Food Co-op under Google and work that out. Are we still broadcasting here? I get a little static here, but you hear me all right?
You know, I'll tell you, Clay, this just, I hate to say it, but this just isn't working. You know, I'm getting a lot of static in the background, and frankly, if the listeners are getting the same thing I am, then this is like I said, this just isn't working. Okay,
I have
Let's try again another time, because this, like I said, this is just totally frustrating.
All right, well, it's frustrating to me, too, here. I can hear you fine, sir. I can hear you fine. I don't know why we're having any problems with the microphones here. I've got 2 different microphones here. Let me try switching microphones one time, real quick. How about that?
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear that? Can you hear that?
Yeah, sounds pretty good.
Okay, well, all right, good. If I can hear you here, I can hear you. So we're working here, and we're up on all our channels. If that was just our microphone that was bad, that's hopefully that's all over.
Let me mention something else, Clay, that is a concern to me.
Okay.
There was a time when the Christian religion, the Muslim religion, and the Jewish religion all considered usury to be a terrible sin. All 3 of these major religions considered that the love of money was the root of all evil. And yet, while all 3 of these religions were all on the same page initially, it seems like the Christian and the Jewish religions have embraced usury, and the Muslims, which are demonized enemy, is really the only religion that is still clinging to the original principles that usury is sin, and it's slavery and it's bondage. And isn't it interesting that the Christian church, which essentially was established at the Council of Nicaea by Constantine, basically the Christian churches, or the Catholic Church, was pretty much organized at that time. And of course, the Catholic Church has become the international corporation, essentially, that controls the world in so many different ways.
And the international bankers in the Catholic Church are obviously very much intertwined one with another. And it seems like the bankers essentially have purchased the church because they have been able to control it. I don't know, if it's the church controlling the banks or the banks controlling the church, but the bottom line is that the people become subjects of tyranny. They become locked in a perpetual state of bondage due to debt servitude.
Well, it is. It's a form of slavery. And the slaves just don't know this. They've refined the art of slavery to the point the slaves don't know they're slaves. It's called economic slavery. And it's the system we're in. Is it not?
Yes, and John Adams basically made the statement back in his day. He said that there's basically two ways that you can enslave a nation or to enslave a man. One way is to conquer him militarily with a sword, and the other way is to loan him money and make him your debt slave. It seems like the world's classes have always been divided into just two classes, the haves and the have-nots, the rich and the poor, the rulers and the ruled. And the people that essentially are in the ruling class want to do everything in their power to be able to control the masses. And they have done so by controlling the media, the schools, the politicians. They totally brainwash us. We are programmed. We sit in front of the television set and we are taught what we're supposed to think. And because when a society can control what people are thinking, they can control their actions. Goethe, the German philosopher, said that the most helpless of all slaves is the man who falsely believes that he is free. It seems like when people think they're free, even though they're not, they work a lot harder, they're a lot more obedient. That's a lot easier to run a farm involving human livestock if the livestock don't realize that they are in fact inside of a cage.
I consider our cities, our big cities, Detroit's probably a good example, to basically be the ghettos and the camps, New World Order camps now. I mean, and cities are supposedly going bankrupt, and that's a scam too, Keith. They're beginning to realize and find out about CAFR, C-A-F-R, Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. All of these cities, including Detroit, got billions of dollars in investments. They're not using it for the people. They're not using it for the people. This whole green energy scam. I don't know if you've got the latest update on that. They're trying to tell people that green energy is good. This is what we need to do. We need to get rid of coal. And, of course, the nuclear power plants are time bombs set off.
Well, I always heard the story that more people have died in the back of Teddy Kennedy's car than have died in all the nuclear accidents in America.
In America. That's right now, but they're building all these nuclear power plants on the New Madrid fault line, and they're certainly expecting that to go sometime. Now, I filmed the first Homeland Security meeting, and they're telling us in case of a natural disaster of significant magnitude, like that earthquake along the New Madrid fault line, or a single outbreak of smallpox, a disease that's been eliminated in the United States for 100 years, since we killed off the Indians using it. It's been, somehow they want you to line up on the Kmart parking lot to get a vaccine for that. And they talk about, Homeland Security talks about needing 400,000 well-armed, well-trained, organized, disciplined troops to control the American people.
Doesn't make any sense.
Well, it does if you're planning on killing the people off. If they're planning to do the same thing to Americans that they did to white Christian Russians, what do we do?
Well, have you talked to your listeners a little bit about the Georgia Guidestones?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, sir. The Georgia Guidestones, they come right out and tell you, wrote it in stone, that we need to reduce the world's population to a manageable 500 million. And as I see it, matter of fact, I've got a link up on biblical prophecy. If our connection, or if you have to go, if our connection goes down and you have to go, I'll share that with people. The prophecies in the Bible, 2,000 years ago, they warned us about the mark of the beast, and Jews that say they're Jews and are not. So I'd say that there's quite a bit of accuracy in the Bible and prophecy. Frankly, I don't know whether it's prophecy or a plan, but it's happening now. And the coming war with Iran and Syria and Russia and China, this looks to me like it's a perfect script, and they're following the same type of script that they used in Iraq, in Libya, in Afghanistan, to get control of the opium poppy crops. Now, in my book, Mystery Babylon, I document that the CIA and the Mossad and George Bush were bringing in all of the cocaine and probably all the heroin out of Vietnam and the Golden Triangle, and with Air America too. They're drugging Americans, and then they arresting you if they catch you with the drugs, and they certainly know you got the drugs because they sold it to you. It is a way to put people in prison. Now, you want to fight about that? Well, you shouldn't be smoking marijuana. Why? Nobody's ever died of it. If you want to do a death chart, it's more dangerous taking aspirin than smoking joints. But if it can land you for 3 years in prison, like it has Roger Christie, a gentleman that came on my show that had a THC Ministries in Hawaii, and about a week after I had him on my show, the feds raided him. He's still being held without bail because they've decided he's a flight risk. He hasn't gone to trial in 3 years, and they've been holding him for 3 years with no bail.
You know, Clay, it's interesting that in America they call this the land of the free. Well, if America's the land of the free, then why is it that 25% of the prisoners in jails are all living in America?
That's right.
America represents 300 million people, essentially out of 7 or 8 billion, which means that we represent just a small percentage of the Earth's population, and yet 25% of all the prisoners are in our jails for having committed crimes where no victims were created.
I want to share this article my friend just sent me, and please interrupt me at any time to concentrate on this. Kaminsky said that they're killing the world right before our eyes. Have you ever heard of medicide? He says it's hard to get the average person to understand, and by the way, he echoes what J. Edgar Hoover said about the conspiracy so vast that we couldn't even wrap our minds around it. Kaminsky said they do their jobs, pay their bills, and raise their kids, never perceiving how they are being slyly guided toward their own destruction. Like slaves who think they're free, they spend their lives in pursuit of things that don't really matter and harm their own health voluntarily. And when you try to tell them about the real problem, they look at you funny and say, you're a hater. Or they're really public spirited citizens who get involved in everything. Or I know a really nice one who helped me a lot. When you try to tell them the real story about what's going on in the world, why everything is so screwed up, they think you're crazy and continue doing things that wreck their life. It is no accident that most people in the world are totally blind to. It is simply no longer enough to point out the crimes against humanity by the corrupt U.S. government without specifying who those behind the scenes pulling the strings on all these atrocities. And
you know,
go ahead.
there's no way that you can win a war unless you know who your opponent is, unless you know their plan. I used to be a high school football coach, and we used to go out and scout our opponents so that we would know that in given a certain situation, we could predict with a certain degree of accuracy what they are liable to do in a given situation. Here we are embattled, fighting for liberty, and we don't, frankly, even know who we're fighting against. And the bankers have done a masterful job of keeping us divided so that we are fighting amongst ourselves rather than fighting the enemy. And I think the most important thing that we need to do is we need to identify who is it that is causing the problem. Henry David Thoreau said, for every 1,000 men who hack at the branches of evil, there's only one who strikes at the root. And that's the problem, is that we need to educate America so that the American people realize the fact that the enemy that we are facing is not located in the Middle East. It's located right here in our own country. It is the international bankers, the financial elite that have sold us into bondage. We are absolutely held in financial servitude. If you go back to the original 13th, not the original, but the second 13th Amendment, it says that slavery and involuntary servitude are prohibited. Well, the fact that they stated that involuntary servitude was prohibited, they obviously were implying that voluntary servitude is totally okay. In other words, you can volunteer for slavery, and unfortunately most of us have given our consent to play this game.
Absolutely, absolutely. When you, as they tell you right up in front, we have the most successful voluntary tax system in the world. And when you sign up for that 1040 form, you volunteered. You're part of the label. But now, listen, why don't we know about this? It's about the usury. Now, the Pharisees that Jesus ran out of the temple, they just call them neocons today. And Kaminsky says, without attaching the word Jew to every crime and every lie the U.S. government tells its own people, most writers are actually doing the work of the Jews by covering up the Jewish roots of all these destructive acts, undermining the freedom and health of everyone in the world, simply by not mentioning the word Jew in their stories. Investigative reports about politics and medicine, practically any other subject that don't mention the word Jew, are essentially meaningless because they don't address the root cause of the problems and subsequently do nothing to solve the problem being written about. In fact, these stories are worse than meaningless. They are deliberately deceitful because they conceal the evil force that has created all the problems in the first place, destabilizing every country in the world for the purposes of profit and control, as well as enjoying perverse pleasures from the pain they inflict on others. What's happening in Beirut, what's happening in Lebanon, what's happening in Palestine, and what's happening here. We are basically, they have kind of made the white people, I was just watching an interesting thing, and because we're not just talking, this is not bad-mouthing Jews, folks. We're trying to tell you exactly how it operates. The U.S. government is now, and they warned us about this during the Cold War. They warned us that the Soviets were infiltrating our intelligence agencies, our FBIs, and, of course, our Congress and our Senate. Nobody gets elected unless they got the money. And who's got the money? The Federal Reserve prints its own money. So the Federal Reserve and the corporations that have sprung up around it are going to leave your children in the streets. It's going to leave them homeless. And more than 1 million Americans lost their homes last year because they couldn't get a job. The U.S. government, according to Kaminsky, and I would challenge anybody to show me anything to prove him wrong, that the U.S. government is now an entirely Jew operation. The Aryan nations 50 years ago, before they got wiped out by the feds, they called it ZOG. They called it Zionist Occupied Government. And most intelligent observers among us know that it has basically, our government has been a Jewish crime syndicate throughout the past, throughout the 20th century, from Homeland Security to the American Federation of Teachers, from both major political parties to the cabal of kosher killers on Wall Street. They're all run by Jews. The future of America is certain. If you're not a Jew or deemed suitable to be a slave of the Jews, you'll simply not be allowed to survive. Now, this sounds radical, this sounds racist, if you're reacting to it from the basis of your programming. The Christians will tell you, well, they're God's chosen people. No, they're not. That's a Schofield Bible. They paid somebody to do all the footnotes in the Bible. And our presidents and senators, I mean, talk about Nixon and Kissinger. Think about our senators that have long been surrounded by Jew operatives directing their paid patsies to produce profits for the paymasters and pain for the populace. In fact, more than pain. What we are seeing now is a mass murder plot, the likes of which the world has never seen, a multi-front extermination program that has the enthusiastic approval of the U.S. government. And not only is it succeeding, but the vast majority of its victims are applauding it and clamoring for more, while staunchly defending the psycho actors who are busy killing them. Now, I understand that sounds harsh, but if what he is saying is true, and according to my research, you know, I mean, I really don't care who your grandmother slept with. I don't care. I don't think you got a lot of choice in what family you're born in. So whether you're Muslim, whether you're born in a Christian family, whether you're born into a Jewish family, that you still got free will, so you can choose to be good or evil. And I think one of the things that I try to do with what I write and what I talk about is express the, I don't want you to be a good Baptist. I don't want you to be a good Methodist. I don't care whether you're a good Muslim. I don't care, as long as you follow morality, if you follow common sense, and if you accept the 10, not the 10 planks on the Communist Manifesto, but the 10 planks of our Bill of Rights, then I think you're a good person and you're working for this country. And this is why I applaud you, Keith, for starting the Constitution Club. You're educating people, and you're giving them a way to unite here. Walt Myers praised it and is writing about it, and I certainly intend to write about it and include this concept in my future articles and in the magazine that I'm going to bring back out again as a bi-weekly or maybe weekly Free American magazine.
Well, one thing I do want to mention in regards to the Constitution, though, that I think that we need to understand, and that is that from the very inception of our country, when King George realized that he was not going to be able to conquer the colonies militarily, he knew that there needed to be Plan B. And Plan B was to be able to keep control of the colonies without directly owning them. If the colonies thought they were free, but they were held in subjection to the banks and to the monetary powers of Great Britain, they would be able to enjoy the benefits of the American colonies without the responsibilities that come with ownership. And so I think that from the very beginning there were elements here in the United States that were very interested in trying to pursue the interests of the crown. I think Alexander Hamilton was absolutely an agent of the Rothschild family, and that he was interested in building up debt. He actually felt that the national debt was a good thing because it basically would force the people to come together under this concept of debt. And I believe that there were several members of the Constitutional Convention, frankly, that were serving the interests of the bankers. For example, let me give you a couple examples. One, in Article 1, Section 1, I think it's in around the second clause, it says that the Congress of the United States will have the power to borrow money on the credit of the United States. Well, in Article 1, Section, I think it's about Clause 5, it says that the in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5, it says that the Congress of the United States shall have the power to coin money and to regulate the value thereof. Well, if Congress has the power to create money...
All right, we gotta take a break. Yeah, we got 5-minute break here. Warm that coffee up, and hopefully our line will stay up here since everything is working now. Hang on, we'll be right back.
Why are you guys so anti-dictators? Imagine if America was a dictatorship. You could let 1% of the people have all the nation's wealth. You could help your rich friends get richer by cutting their taxes and bailing them out when they gamble and lose. You could ignore the needs of the poor for healthcare and education. Your media would appear free, but would secretly be controlled by one person and his family. You could wiretap phones. You could torture foreign prisoners. You could have rigged elections. You could lie about why you go to war. You could fill your prisons with one particular racial group, and no one would complain. You could use the media to scare the people into supporting policies that are against their interests.
Tune in Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time for Liberation Nation with Deacon John, where America comes to hear the truth.
I know this is hard for you Americans to imagine, but please try.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. The host, Governor Corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Now, you can share the topics that drive the discussions of your favorite talk shows with TalkStream Live's topic-driven talk radio. List and promote real-time talk radio topics, or post the topics that you want to hear. Hot topics are tweeted and retweeted, and include simple click-to-listen audio links. The future of talk radio is topic-driven talk radio. Available now at TalkStreamLive.com.